I'm here with Jenny Tipping, who's a certified trainer with the Centre for Nonviolent Communication and is one of Woodbrooke's associate tutors. So for those who may not be familiar, what is nonviolent communication and why is it important?
So, nonviolent communication (NVC) is it's a system of communicating with ourselves and other people, which has at its core the intention to connect. Um, and so it's based on empathy, which in NVC we understand as focusing on the fundamental human needs, which someone is always trying to meet at any given time. And I think it's important because it can be employed in any situation to find common ground and to work with other people non-violently.
So how can nonviolent communication help people in their everyday lives, whether personal relationships, workplace, or in their activism?
Um, so what we see on the surface of our own or someone else's behaviour is generally a strategy to meet a need. And if we focus on that strategy, then it's quite likely that sooner or later we're going to disagree with them. But if we try and discern the needs that they are trying to meet by that strategy, then we're likely to have a much greater understanding of where they're coming from. And so we might still disagree with the strategy that they've chosen, but we'll have more understanding of why they chose it and we'll be able to resonate with that need on a human level. And so this same process can be applied whether we're dealing with our intimate partners, whether our children, so it doesn't have to be somebody who's also learnt NVC. It can be with work colleagues, but also we can use it to empathise with people in power, so politicians that we may never meet. But it just allows us to develop a more empathic relationship with words, even if we really, really disagree with them.
Okay, great. And why do you think MBC resonates with Quaker values?
So for me, NVC is the kind of the how-to guide for a lot of things. So it's the process. We're told that we should love our neighbour as ourselves. But both of those things are often very tricky. Loving our neighbour and loving ourselves are often very tricky. And so MVC can be used as the process by which we can achieve that, both loving ourselves and other people. So it's the process by which we can live out the peace testimony. But the other thing I think with Quakers is that we are often so focused on peace and keeping things calm and loving, then sometimes that means that we can deal with conflict very beautifully. But sometimes the risk is that we brush things under the carpet. And what MVC can do, it provides a framework so that we can bring disagreements into the open in a loving way, so that we can find a way forward, maintaining connection and maintaining peace.
Great. And finally, what can someone expect to gain from taking a course on nonviolent communication?
So MVC courses are always really experiential. So a lot of people come because they've read a book or because they've seen videos. And those can really pique your interest and they're very useful for that. But until you're actually practicing the skills with other humans, then you're limited as to how far your learning will go. So courses are always experiential, regardless of whether you do that online or in person. So on my courses for Woodbrooke, most of which are online, but I do some in person. So we learn all together using spoken word or slides or demonstrations with me and my colleague. And then we go into small groups to practice what we've learnt with support from me or the other tutor. And actually, the feedback is that I've got both within the group and on the forums afterwards is that people often experience quite major shifts in how they perceive ongoing situations in their lives or a long-standing conflict that they've had with somebody. And they often find ways to implement their learning really quickly in their personal lives or in their working lives. But also sometimes a course will just, especially a foundation course, will just open things up. And it might be that you take another one with another trainer, or you start exploring things in other ways. And so it's not unusual for people to want to take a series of workshops so that they can learn from other people with different approaches.